In a small research lab tucked away in a quiet town, a group of scientists were working on something very unusual and mysterious. These scientists were not like the usual ones who studied plants, animals, or space. They were experts in a special kind of science called thanatology, the study of death. Their job was to understand what happens when people die. For many years, people had been afraid to talk about death or what happens after death. Some believed in spirits, some believed in heaven or hell, and some thought nothing happened at all. But these scientists wanted to find answers using real facts, real experiments, and real evidence. The leader of this group was Dr. Anil Sharma, a serious but kind man in his late 40s. He had spent most of his life studying how the human body works and what changes happen after death. Dr. Sharma had always been curious about what happens in those first moments after someone dies. Do people feel anything? Is the mind still working? Is there any sign of life or something else inside the body? These questions were very difficult to answer, but Dr. Sharma was determined to try. One day, Dr. Sharma called a meeting with his team to discuss a new idea. "We need to do something different," he said. "We need to find a way to see what happens inside a coffin after a person is buried." His team was surprised and a little scared by this suggestion. Watching what happens inside a coffin was something no one had done before, and it sounded almost like something from a horror movie. But Dr. Sharma was serious. He explained that with today's technology, it was possible to build a small camera and sensors that could fit inside a coffin and record everything that happened after burial. This could be a breakthrough in understanding death and what happens to the human body and mind. The team discussed the idea carefully. They knew it was risky and strange, but it was also very exciting. They called it Project Beyond. They planned to design a tiny, strong camera that could survive being buried underground for many hours. This camera would record video and sound and also measure temperature and movement inside the coffin. Along with the camera, they wanted to place special sensors that could detect even the smallest change in the environment. Next, the scientists had to think about who or what they would bury with the camera inside. This was the hardest part because they had to respect the dead and be ethical. After long talks with doctors, families, and ethics committees, they found a volunteer. The volunteer was an elderly man named Mr. Kumar, who had recently passed away from natural causes. Before he died, Mr. Kumar had agreed to help science by donating his body for research. His family understood and supported the project because they believed it might help others in the future. With permission from the family and all legal papers signed, the scientists prepared everything carefully. They cleaned and tested the camera many times to make sure it would work perfectly. The camera was small, about the size of a large wristwatch, but it had the latest technology inside. It could record in the dark and capture sounds that were too faint for human ears. The sensors were also very sensitive. The scientists placed everything inside a small box, which they called the black box, to protect it from dirt and moisture. On the day of the burial, the scientists arrived early at the cemetery. It was a calm morning, with soft sunlight, and birds singing nearby. The family of Mr. Kumar was there, saying their final goodbyes. The scientists felt a mix of emotions: sadness, respect, and excitement. They carefully placed Mr. Kumar's body inside the coffin and then placed the black box with the camera and sensors beside him. Before sealing the coffin, Dr. Sharma whispered a silent prayer for the man's peaceful rest and for the success of their experiment. Once the coffin was closed and buried underground, the scientists returned to their lab. From there, they could control the camera remotely and watch everything that was happening inside the coffin. They had prepared a computer system to receive live data from the camera and sensors. As the hours passed, they sat quietly, waiting and watching the screens. Nothing unusual happened at first. The temperature slowly dropped, and everything seemed calm. But the scientists were not just watching for normal things. They wanted to find signs of something extraordinary. Maybe a flicker of movement, a change in temperature that didn't make sense, or sounds that seemed strange. The idea of watching a dead body in a coffin made some team members feel nervous. They had all heard stories about ghosts and spirits, and sometimes those stories made their hearts beat faster. To pass the time, the scientists talked about what might happen. Some believed they would see nothing, just silence and stillness. Others hoped to see some signs that could explain what happens after death. Dr. Sharma reminded them to keep an open mind and focus on the facts. Science is about discovering the truth, even if it surprises us, he said. Hours went by, and the data from the sensors showed normal changes expected after death. The body cooling down, air pressure changing, and small sounds like soil shifting. But then, something strange happened. One of the sensors detected a faint movement. The camera also picked up a small shadow moving inside the coffin. The scientists stared at the screen in disbelief. Could it be a mistake? Was the camera malfunctioning? Dr. Sharma decided to watch the video carefully and asked his team to double-check the equipment. They found no errors. The movement was real. It was subtle, like a twitch or a shift, but it was definitely there. The scientists were both excited and confused. Was this just the last reflexes of the body, or was it something more? This small discovery made the scientists even more curious. They knew that the first few hours after death were still a mystery to science. Could they be seeing evidence of life after death? Could the camera help them understand if the soul or consciousness stays in the body for a while? These questions kept their minds racing. The scientists continued watching through the night. The camera recorded more strange movements and sounds, soft whispers, faint taps, and shadows that seemed to appear and disappear. Each time they saw something unusual, their hearts jumped. Some team members whispered, "Is this real?" Others tried to find scientific explanations, like insects moving in the coffin or tiny soil shifts. Dr. Sharma stayed calm and reminded everyone to keep an open mind. "We must collect all the evidence before we jump to conclusions," he said. He asked the team to write down every detail, every sound, and every movement they observed. As the night passed, the experiment turned into more than just science. It became a journey into the unknown, a search for answers about life, death, and what might come after. The scientists were no longer just researchers. They were explorers in a world that many feared to enter. By the early morning, the camera's battery was running low. The scientists knew they would have to stop the experiment soon and analyze the recorded footage in detail. But deep inside, they felt something had changed. This simple camera placed inside a coffin was showing them a story that no one had seen before. The first part of this story ends here, but it was only the beginning of a discovery that would challenge what we know about death. The scientists were ready to face whatever the footage showed next, even if it scared them. After the camera and sensors were carefully placed inside the coffin with Mr. Kumar's body, the scientists knew their real wait had begun. It was a quiet morning, and the sun shone gently over the cemetery as the heavy lid was closed and the coffin was buried beneath the soft earth. For the scientists, this was the start of a long, anxious time. They returned to their lab with both hope and fear. Hope to discover something amazing, and fear of what the camera might reveal. Inside the lab, the scientists prepared the control room where the cameras and sensors would send their information. The room was filled with computers, monitors, and blinking lights, all connected to the tiny black box hidden deep underground. The scientists sat in front of the screens, eager to see what the camera would capture. The atmosphere was tense but quiet. Everyone was aware that what they might find could change how the world sees death forever. At first, the data came in slowly. The temperature inside the coffin was dropping as expected. After death, the body cools because it no longer produces heat. The air pressure inside the coffin was steady, and the soil around the coffin seemed calm. The camera's night vision showed only darkness, except for tiny specks of dust floating in the air. For hours, everything seemed normal, just as the scientists predicted. But then, around the fourth hour after burial, something strange began to happen. One of the movement sensors, designed to detect the slightest motion, suddenly registered a small, quick change. It was so faint that at first, the scientists thought it might be a mistake or interference from nearby electronic devices. But when they checked the camera footage, they saw it too, a shadow flickering near the corner of the coffin. This shadow was not like a normal shadow. It moved on its own, independent of any light outside. The scientists' hearts beat faster as they stared at the screen. They knew they had to be careful and avoid jumping to conclusions. Was it just an insect? A small piece of cloth shifting? Or was it something no one had ever seen before? To be sure, the scientists reviewed every bit of data and rechecked their equipment. The camera was high quality and had been tested many times. There was no sign of a malfunction. The shadow moved again, briefly, and this time the sound sensors caught something unusual. A faint tapping sound, almost like a gentle knock from inside the coffin. The scientists exchanged looks. Some of them were excited and hopeful, while others felt uneasy. They had all heard stories about spirits and ghosts, but they knew science required proof, not just stories. Still, the strange movement and tapping were difficult to explain. No living creature should have been inside the coffin, and the coffin itself was sealed tight. As the hours passed, more odd things happened. The camera caught what looked like soft flashes of light inside the coffin. The temperature, which was steadily falling, suddenly rose for a few minutes, then dropped again. The movement sensors detected small twitches and shifts. At one point, the camera even showed the faint outline of a shape, like a blurred figure, but it disappeared quickly, leaving the scientists wondering if they had imagined it. These strange signs sparked a mix of emotions in the lab. Some scientists became more curious and wanted to keep watching as long as possible. Others were nervous and wondered if they should stop the experiment. Dr. Sharma, the leader, reminded everyone to stay calm and focused. "We must remember this is science," he said. "We are here to observe, not to fear." Throughout the day, the team took turns watching the screens, making notes of every unusual event. They kept discussing possible explanations. Maybe tiny insects had entered the coffin through small cracks. Maybe the shadows and lights were tricks caused by the camera's infrared technology. Maybe the sounds were echoes from above ground. Despite their doubts, the team agreed to keep the experiment running through the night. They set up extra equipment to record more detailed data. They also placed microphones near the burial site to capture any outside noises that might interfere. As night fell, the mood in the lab changed. The darkness outside matched the darkness inside the coffin. The scientists worked quietly, feeling the weight of the unknown. Then, around midnight, the camera caught something more intense, more movement, more light, and clearer sounds. The video showed a soft glow moving slowly around the inside of the coffin. The shape looked like a flickering flame, but without heat or smoke. The tapping sounds turned into rhythmic knocking, almost like someone trying to communicate. The temperature suddenly spiked up by several degrees for a few minutes, then fell back again. The scientists were stunned. They had expected to see only quiet and stillness, but instead the camera revealed something alive, or at least something active, inside the coffin. Some believed this could be proof of a soul or spirit lingering after death. Others thought it might be a natural phenomenon, yet unknown to science. The team debated these findings quietly but intensely. They discussed the possibility of gases released by the body after death, causing light reflections or sound. They talked about optical illusions or technical glitches, but no explanation fit perfectly. The glow and movements were too clear, and the sounds too rhythmic, to be easily dismissed. As the night deepened, the strange activity slowed down and eventually stopped. The temperature returned to normal cooling, and the coffin went silent. Again, the scientists felt a mixture of relief and disappointment. They knew the experiment had shown something new, but they also knew the hardest part was still ahead: analyzing the footage and understanding what it truly meant. The next morning, the team gathered to discuss their next steps. They decided to carefully download all the data from the camera and sensors. They planned to review every second of the footage to catch any details they might have missed. They also talked about conducting more experiments with different bodies to see if the strange events would happen again. Outside the lab, news about the project had started to spread. Some people were curious and excited, while others were scared or skeptical. Rumors began circulating about ghosts and spirits being caught on camera. The scientists hoped to keep the experiment scientific and professional, but they knew public interest would grow. Back in the lab, Dr. Sharma reminded his team that this was only the beginning. "We must be careful and patient," he said. "Science is about asking questions and looking for answers, not jumping to conclusions." The camera in the coffin had shown the first signs of something mysterious, but the story was far from over. The scientists were ready to dive deeper into the unknown, knowing that what they might discover could change everything people believed about death. After the scientists had patiently waited and observed the footage from the camera inside the coffin, the moment came when they finally downloaded and began to study the recordings in detail. They gathered around the big computer screens, eager, but also anxious, knowing that what they might find could be either groundbreaking or completely explainable by science. As they played the videos, their eyes widened with shock and disbelief at what they saw. At first, the footage appeared normal. It showed Mr. Kumar's body resting peacefully in the coffin, the darkness surrounding him. But then, something strange began to happen. The camera captured movements that no one expected. Shadows shifted slowly across the coffin walls, even though the coffin was deep underground with no light source to cause such shadows. The shadows didn't look like anything natural. There was no clear shape at first, just flickering darkness that seemed to move with intention. The scientists leaned closer. Then, as they watched frame by frame, the shadows slowly began to take form. Some saw what looked like the faint outline of a face, eyes, a nose, and a mouth barely visible, like a ghostly image appearing through a fog. Others thought they saw hands reaching out, moving gently but urgently. The room was silent except for the soft hum of the computers. Suddenly, the sound sensors picked up something else. Whispers. Faint, barely audible, but definitely there. The whispers were hard to understand but sounded like words in a language nobody could recognize. The scientists replayed this section many times, trying to make sense of it. The whispers seemed to grow louder and then suddenly stop, as if someone or something was trying to communicate, but then gave up. The scientists could hardly believe their eyes and ears. They screamed quietly, not out of fear, but from pure surprise. This was something they had never seen in any scientific study before. What was happening inside the coffin was beyond normal explanation. It was as if the camera had caught a glimpse of something supernatural, something that science had never proven, but many people had believed for centuries. The room filled with questions. Was this the soul of Mr. Kumar? Was it some kind of energy left behind? Could this be proof of life after death? Or was it a trick of the camera? The scientists discussed all possibilities, but no clear answer emerged. One of the team members, Dr. Mehta, suggested that maybe the camera's infrared technology was creating these images and sounds by mistake. Infrared cameras work by detecting heat and light invisible to the human eye, and sometimes this technology can produce strange effects. But others pointed out that the movements and whispers didn't match any known technical glitches. As they kept watching, more strange things appeared. The camera recorded sudden flashes of light, bright but quick, like lightning inside the coffin. These flashes weren't caused by electricity or anything mechanical. because the equipment was carefully sealed and monitored. The temperature inside the coffin, which had been slowly falling, showed sudden bursts of warmth, sometimes rising several degrees in just a few seconds. The scientists measured this carefully and confirmed it was real, not a sensor error. The most chilling moment came when the camera showed a shadowy figure sitting up inside the coffin for a few seconds. The figure's shape was blurry, but it was clear that something moved like a person waking up or trying to get out. The figure then slowly sank back down and disappeared into the darkness. The scientists gasped, unable to explain how this could happen. This footage caused a mixture of fear, excitement, and confusion in the research team. Some of the scientists were thrilled. They believed they had found the first real evidence of life after death. Others were scared. They wondered if they had disturbed something they should not have. Dr. Sharma, the leader, reminded everyone to stay calm and objective. "We must be scientists first," he said. "We will analyze everything carefully before making any claims." Meanwhile, the media had caught wind of the experiment. News reporters arrived at the lab, asking questions and filming the scientists. The story quickly spread online and on television. People all over the world were fascinated and frightened by the idea that a camera inside a coffin had captured ghosts or spirits. Some religious leaders saw the footage as proof of the soul and the afterlife. They praised the scientists for helping to prove their beliefs with evidence. Others were skeptical, saying the footage was fake or the result of camera tricks. Skeptics and scientists from other fields demanded the team share all their data for review. The scientists agreed to be transparent. They released some of the footage for public viewing, but they also warned everyone to wait for their full analysis. They wanted to be sure before claiming they had discovered proof of life after death. Inside the lab, the scientists worked day and night. They used computers to enhance the footage, remove noise, and try to identify patterns in the sounds and movements. They invited experts in video technology, physics, and even parapsychology, the study of paranormal phenomena, to help analyze the data. Some experts suggested that the flashes of light and shadows might be caused by small chemical reactions in the body after death. Others thought the whispers could be electrical interference or random noise mistaken for voices, but none of these explanations fully accounted for the clear figure that appeared to move inside the coffin. The scientists also thought about the possibility that the mind or soul might linger for a short time after death, trapped in the body or in the nearby space. They recalled stories from many cultures about spirits visiting the living or trying to communicate after death. The pressure on the scientists grew. They faced questions from the media, criticism from skeptics, and excitement from believers. Some team members felt overwhelmed. A few even wanted to stop the experiment, afraid of what they might discover next. But Dr. Sharma remained determined. "We are on the edge of a new discovery," he said. "Whether it is science or something beyond science, we owe it to truth and to Mr. Kumar to find answers." As the days passed, the scientists planned to continue their research with more experiments, hoping to confirm what they had seen. They knew the footage had changed everything. It was a glimpse into a world no one had explored before, a world where the line between life and death was not as clear as people thought. This part of the story ends with the scientists standing at a crossroads. They had found something shocking and mysterious inside the coffin. Now they had to decide how far they were willing to go to uncover the truth about what lies beyond death. The scientists continued their work with even more dedication after the strange and unexplained events caught on camera inside the coffin. Now the world was watching them closely, and the pressure was heavier than ever. Everyone wanted to know the truth. What was really happening inside that coffin, buried deep underground with the body of Mr. Kumar? The lab was filled with buzzing computers, blinking monitors, and quiet conversations. The scientists analyzed every second of the footage, every sound, every change in temperature, and every flicker of light. They were like detectives solving a mystery, But the mystery was far more complex than anything they had faced before. They studied the videos, they noticed that some of the strange phenomena seemed to happen in cycles. The movements inside the coffin were not constant but appeared at certain times, sometimes every hour, sometimes with longer gaps. The temperature, changes and bursts of light followed these cycles too, almost like a heartbeat. This discovery led them to an exciting idea. Maybe the body was not completely dead in the way they had thought. Maybe some kind of energy or life force remained active inside, pulsing gently even after death. The scientists discussed the possibility that death might be more like a slow process, not an instant stop. They decided to add new sensors to their experiment. These sensors could detect tiny electrical signals, magnetic fields, and other subtle signs of life or energy. They hoped this would give them more clues about what was really happening inside the coffin. Meanwhile, the camera kept recording everything in high definition. Sometimes, the shadowy figure appeared again, sitting up or moving its hands. The whispers became clearer, although still hard to understand. The scientists used special audio software to try and enhance the voices, hoping to decode the mysterious language. One night, as the team watched the live feed, something unexpected happened. The coffin lid, buried deep under the earth, seemed to tremble slightly. The movement sensors picked up a small but real shake. At first, the scientists thought it was an earthquake or some outside force. They checked immediately for any natural causes, but there were none. The tremor lasted only a few seconds, but it was enough to startle everyone. Then, the camera showed the shadowy figure moving more clearly than before. It looked like the figure was trying to push against the coffin walls, as if trying to get out. The scientists were amazed and scared at the same time. What if the figure was a spirit trapped inside, desperate to be free? Or was it something else, an energy or presence that didn't belong in this world? The pressure inside the lab increased. Some scientists began to question whether they should continue the experiment. They worried that they might be disturbing something dangerous, but Dr. Sharma insisted that they must keep going. "We have a duty to science and to the truth," he said firmly. "We cannot stop now." In the following days, the team made important progress. They managed to improve the audio recordings and discovered a pattern in the whispers. The sounds appeared to be repeating a few simple words or phrases. While they couldn't translate the language, the repetition suggested an attempt to communicate. The scientists called in linguists and experts in ancient languages, hoping to find a match. None could identify the language, but all agreed it was not random noise. It was clearly a form of speech, a message. At the same time, the electrical and magnetic sensors detected unusual spikes around the coffin. These spikes seemed to connect with the bursts of light and movements. The scientists hypothesized that some form of energy was being released from the body or the spirit within. This led to debates and theories. Some believed that Mr. Kumar's soul was trying to send a message to the living. Others thought it might be a natural phenomenon related to decomposition or chemical reactions. The mystery deepened, but the scientists remained hopeful they would find answers. The experiment attracted attention from other scientists and institutions. Many visited the lab, eager to see the evidence for themselves. Some were skeptics, while others were curious believers. The scientists welcomed the visitors, but asked for patience and respect for the ongoing research. Outside the lab, the public's fascination grew. People talked about the possibility of life after death, and the idea of communicating from beyond the grave. The story made headlines around the world, inspiring books, documentaries, and debates. Despite all this, the scientists remained focused on their work. They carefully documented everything and prepared to share their findings in scientific journals. They hoped their research would help bridge the gap between science and spirituality, opening new doors to understanding death. One day, the team decided to test a bold new idea. They played back the whispers through speakers placed near the coffin, hoping that if the spirit or energy inside could hear the sounds, it might respond. This was a risky experiment, but they felt it was worth trying. To everyone's amazement, after the whispers were played, the coffin responded. The temperature rose, the light flashes increased, and the shadowy figure appeared again, clearer and longer than before. It seemed to acknowledge the sounds, almost like it was answering back. This breakthrough excited the scientists more than ever. They realized they were possibly making contact with something beyond the physical world. They continued the experiments, with caution and respect, learning more about this mysterious presence. As the story of the camera in the coffin spread, it changed how many people thought about death. It showed that even after the body stops moving and the heart stops beating, something else might still be there. A presence, a message, or a spark of life that science was only beginning to understand. The scientists knew their work was just beginning. There were still many questions to answer, many mysteries to solve, but they felt proud and hopeful that their research could help humanity see death not as an end, but as a doorway to something new and unknown. After weeks of observing the strange and mysterious events inside the coffin, the scientists reached a point where everything felt both thrilling and terrifying. The evidence they had gathered was unlike anything ever seen before. The camera, footage, the sounds, the sudden movements, and the bursts of light all hinted at something beyond normal understanding. But the question remained: what exactly was it? The scientists gathered again to discuss their findings and plan the next steps carefully. They knew this was not just a scientific experiment anymore. It was a journey into the unknown, into a world that challenged everything they thought they knew about life and death. Some members of the team had started feeling the weight of the unknown, while others were filled with hope and determination. One of the key challenges they faced was how to interpret the messages caught on the recordings. The whispers and sounds inside the coffin were still not fully understood, but the scientists were more convinced than ever that someone or something was trying to communicate. The repetition of certain sounds, the rhythm of the tapping, and the pattern of the light flashes seemed deliberate. The scientists realized that understanding this communication might be the key to unlocking the mystery. They brought in experts from different fields, linguists, cryptographers, and even spiritual researchers, to help decode the sounds and symbols. Together, they listened to the recordings repeatedly, analyzing every detail. Slowly, a pattern began to emerge. The sounds inside the coffin resembled a primitive language, a sequence of clicks and tones that, when arranged, formed simple words. The scientists compared these words to ancient languages and codes but found no exact match. It was almost as if this was a new form of communication, born from the unknown world between life and death. This discovery sparked new theories. Some suggested that the spirit or energy inside the coffin was trying to reach out using the simplest means available, a kind of universal language made of sounds and light patterns. Others believed this was a scientific phenomenon, where the dying body released energy in rhythmic bursts that accidentally formed sounds resembling speech. Regardless of the explanation, the scientists knew they were witnessing something incredible. They decided to enhance their communication efforts. They programmed devices to send back simple signals, taps, flashes of light, and recorded sounds, hoping to trigger a response from the coffin's mysterious presence. The results were astonishing. Each time the scientists sent signals, the responses inside the coffin became stronger and clearer. The light bursts increased in brightness, the tapping sounds grew louder and more complex, and the shadowy figure appeared more defined and even, seemed to interact with the signals. It was as if they had begun a conversation, an exchange between the living and whatever remained inside the coffin. This interaction changed the atmosphere in the lab. What was once just an experiment now felt like a dialogue, a bridge between two worlds. The scientists were cautious but excited. They knew they had to document everything carefully, respecting both science and the unknown. Outside the lab, the world's fascination grew even more. People were divided. Some celebrated the possibility of life after death, while others warned against meddling with things beyond human understanding. Religious leaders spoke about the soul and afterlife, while skeptics demanded more proof and called it a hoax. The scientists remained focused on their work. They published their findings in journals and invited peer reviews. Many scientists around the world became interested, and some started similar experiments. The discovery sparked a new field of study: research into the moments after death and the possibility of communication from beyond. Amidst all this, the team never forgot the person at the center of their study, Mr. Kumar. They felt a deep respect for him and hoped their work honored his memory. Some members of the team even wondered if Mr. Kumar's spirit was guiding them, trying to tell them something important about life and death. As the experiment continued, the scientists observed new and surprising phenomena. The temperature inside. The coffin sometimes rose enough to slow decomposition, and the energy spikes suggested a force sustaining something inside. The shadowy figure sometimes appeared to be reaching out, as if asking for help or trying to explain something. The scientists also explored the possibility of helping this presence find peace or move on. They played calming sounds and music, hoping to comfort the spirit. Occasionally, after these sessions, the activity inside the coffin would become calmer, as if soothed. These moments gave the team hope that their work was not just scientific, but also deeply human. It showed that even in death, connections could exist between people, between worlds, and between hearts. The story of the camera in the coffin ended not with final answers, but with a new beginning. It opened minds, challenged beliefs, and showed the power of curiosity and courage in the face of the unknown. The scientist's journey was a reminder that life and death are part of a greater mystery, one that invites us all to explore, learn, and respect the unseen. Their discovery changed the way many people think about death, not as an end, but as a passage, a door to something beyond. And in the quiet darkness of the coffin, beneath the earth, the presence remained, waiting, watching, and perhaps finally heard.